Today, we're diving deep into the current state of the 2024 polling. And to really understand what's going on, we're going to adjust these figures using insights from the 2020 election. This approach will help us visualize just how strong of a position former President Donald Trump is in right now, especially with less than 20 days remaining until Election Day on November 5th. By filling in the map, we can see the competitive races more clearly and focus on the states that really matter in this election cycle. Let's kick things off in the Midwest, which is often seen as the battleground where elections are decided. The states here are critical, and we're starting with Minnesota, a state that hasn't swung red since 1972. Current polling shows Vice President Kamala Harris leading by about 4 points. However, history suggests that Democrats might be overestimated by around 6.2 percentage points again. And if that holds true, Trump would actually be on track to win Minnesota by 1.5. This scenario isn't far-fetched. Consider what happened in 2016 when Hillary Clinton only managed to win Minnesota by a slim 1.5 margin. So the idea of Trump flipping the state by the same margin he lost it is entirely plausible, given these dynamics. We're marking Minnesota as a lean red state on our map. Moving on to Iowa, we see Trump currently leading by 4. When we adjust for the polling error seen in past elections, he could win Iowa by an impressive 10.2. Trump previously won this state by margins of 9 in 2016 and 8 in 2020, demonstrating a consistent Republican trend. So it's safe to say Trump is on track for a solid double-digit victory in Iowa, positioning the state firmly in the likely red category. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Next up is Wisconsin, a state that has been a real nail biter in recent elections. As it stands, Harris has a slight 0.3 lead, but that's based on the pure polling average. The 3 most recent polls indicate a dead heat, showing how competitive this race truly is. However, looking back at previous elections, we see a pattern of polling overestimating Democrats. In 2016, Clinton was expected to win Wisconsin by 6 points, but ended up losing. Biden, too, was supposed to win by 6.3 in 2020, but scraped by with only a 0.6 victory. Adjusting the current polling, we see Trump leading Wisconsin by about 5 point net. And with this adjustment, we are categorizing Wisconsin as likely red, reflecting Trump's strong position there. Let's shift our focus to Michigan, another key battleground state. In 2020, Michigan was considered the most liberal of the swing states, with Biden carrying it by 2.8. However, current polling shows Trump leading by 1. When we analyze the recent trends, it becomes clear he's ahead in many polls. This marks a significant shift from previous elections where the polling heavily favored Democrats. For instance, Clinton was projected to win Michigan by 11.4 in 2016, yet she didn't secure the state. Biden also underperformed relative to expectations. So with our adjusted margin, Trump is showing a 7.2 lead in Michigan, allowing us to categorize it as likely Republican on our map. Now let's move to Ohio, a state that Trump flipped in 2016 and has remained red ever since. Currently, he leads by 7.4 in the polls, and when we adjust for the 2020 errors, he's on track to win Ohio by a staggering 13.6. This would be a solid red win for Trump, marking Ohio as a strong Republican state on our map for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Next, we to Pennsylvania, often regarded as a crucial state in any presidential election. Trump leads by a narrow 0.3 in the polling average, and when we look at the data, he's dominating most of the polls. The adjusted margin indicates Trump could win Pennsylvania by 6.5. Just like Wisconsin and Michigan, Pennsylvania has seen significant overestimation of Democratic support in previous elections. Hillary Clinton was expected to win by 7 in 2016, but ended up losing the state. Today, with Trump not only performing well, but actually leading in the polls, it suggests that Pennsylvania is leaning likely red in this election. In Nebraska's 2nd district, Harris currently holds a 10-point lead, but adjusting for the polling error shows her with only a 3.8 advantage. This is still enough to categorize it as lean blue, but it reflects a highly competitive landscape. Now we're moving to the Northeast, where Harris is expected to win New York by about 12 as based on current polling. This would be a disappointing performance for Democrats, marking the worst showing for any Democratic candidate in New York since 1988. The adjusted margin shows Harris leading by just 7.3. So New York will be categorized as likely blue. In New Hampshire, Harris has a lead of 7.4 in the polling average. However, after adjustments, she's only ahead by about 1.2. This state was incredibly competitive in 2016, with Clinton winning by a razor-thin margin of 0.37. Given the competitive nature of New Hampshire, we'll categorize it as lean blue, just above the threshold to avoid being classified as tilt. Let's move on to Maine, where Harris holds an average lead of 11.7, but we must be cautious about these numbers since the polling seems flawed. Adjusting the margin has her leading by only 5.5, so we're categorizing Maine as likely blue, but it's worth noting the potential for competitiveness. Shifting gears, we head down to the Sun Belt, which is shaping up to be the second major battleground of this election. Alongside the Midwest, Virginia currently shows Harris leading by 6.4, but the adjusted margin indicates she's barely ahead by 0. This tells us Virginia is going to be extremely competitive, so we'll categorize it as tilt blue. Heading to North Carolina, Trump won this state in both 2016 and 2020, and he's currently leading by 1.2 in the polling average. He's ahead in almost every poll aside from one that seems skewed with a left-leaning sample. Given that his adjusted margin shows a strong improvement over his 2016 win, we're placing North Carolina in the likely red category. In Georgia, we see the most competitive race of the 2020 cycle. Biden won Georgia by a slim 0.24, marking a significant moment as it was the first time a Democrat carried the peach state since 1992, while Biden performed well in 2020. Harris lacks the same appeal and momentum. Current polling has Trump leading by 0.9, and the adjusted margin suggests he could win Georgia by an impressive 7.1. Thus, we're placing Georgia in the likely red category. In Florida, a state that has always been a focal point in elections, Trump leads by 6.1. Adjusting the margin indicates he could win Florida by 12.3. Given the recent Republican trends and Ron DeSantis' strong re-election as governor by a 19-point margin in 2022, Florida is solid red on our map. In Texas, Trump has a strong lead by 6 points, which mirrors his margin from 2020. The adjusted figures show he's ahead by a double-digit lead, solidifying Texas as another solid red state for Republicans. Despite some shifts toward the left in urban areas, the overall demographic and electoral landscape means it will take a long time for Democrats to realistically challenge Republican dominance in Texas. Now we turn to Colorado and New Mexico, both states that Biden won by comfortable margins in 2020. However, things have shifted. In Colorado, the adjusted margin shows Harris leading by just 4.8, marking it as a lean blue state. New Mexico presents a similar picture with Harris leading by 8 points in the polls, but the adjusted margin shows her ahead by only 1.8, also categorizing it as lean blue. Finally, we arrive in Arizona, another critical battleground. Trump leads by 1.1 in the polling average, and the adjusted margin shows he's on track to win by 7.3. Given the competitive nature of this state in past elections, it's likely to trend red this time around. Wrapping things up, we look at Nevada, which has been a crucial state in recent elections. Though it only carries 6 electoral votes, while not pivotal for either candidate, Trump victory here would signal a significant symbolic win. Currently, he leads by half a percentage point in the polling average, and the adjusted margin shows he could win by 6.7. Thus, we'll categorize Nevada as likely Republican. In summary, based on the 2024 polls adjusted for the errors observed in the 2020 election, Donald Trump appears to be on track to win 322 electoral votes. This includes a surprising potential flip of Minnesota, a state that has been blue for over 5 decades. Conversely, Kamala Harris is likely to barely hold on to traditionally blue states like Virginia, New Mexico, and New Hampshire. Now, some of you might think this scenario seems outlandish, and it's worth noting that it reflects a combination of current polling and historical trends. In 2020, Biden was projected to secure upwards of 330 electoral votes, demonstrating just how much polling can misrepresent the landscape. The purpose of this discussion is to provide context about the previous polling errors and to illustrate just how well Trump is positioned as we approach the election. It's an intriguing and highly competitive election cycle ahead, and the coming weeks will be critical in determining the final outcome. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis as we continue to follow this election closely.